I remember the day everything changed. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind of day that has a certain clarity, where the sun hangs low in the sky, casting warm golden hues over everything. I was sitting on the edge of our bed, flipping through travel brochures that had arrived that morning. My wife Claire had promised we would plan our next vacation together, a much-needed escape from our mundane routine. But as I flipped through the pages, a gnawing feeling of uncertainty took hold of me. The door creaked open and Claire walked in, her face flushed with excitement. She had just returned from a meeting with our travel agent, a man named Derek. He was younger, charming, and had a way of making even the dullest itinerary sound like an adventure. As she animatedly recounted their discussion, I felt a strange discomfort settle in my stomach. It was a feeling I couldn't quite place at that moment. Later that evening, after a dinner filled with forced laughter and polite conversation, I decided to check my email. A message popped up from Derek, sent to both Claire and me. The subject line read, "Your itinerary." I opened it expecting to see the details of our upcoming trip, but what I found made my heart drop. The email was filled with personal notes, a familiar tone that felt too intimate for a mere travel agent. My eyes skimmed the lines and my breath caught in my throat when I saw the phrase, "I can't wait to explore the world with you." My mind raced, processing the implications. I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. I clicked on the link to the shared document and there it was, a detailed itinerary not just of our upcoming trip but of clandestine rendezvous that made it painfully clear. Claire had crossed a line and Derek was not just the travel agent, he was her lover. As reality sank in, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was I so blind to not see the signs? Memories of her late-night phone calls and whispered conversations flooded my mind, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had trusted her. I had trusted him. I confronted her that night, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. The confrontation was explosive. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. The tears that streamed down her face were not of remorse, but of fear of losing the comfortable life we had built together. I felt a strange detachment as I watched her, as if I were observing a scene from a movie rather than participating in my own life. The love I had for her twisted into something dark and bitter. In the days that followed, I was in a fog of confusion and pain. I couldn't bear to look at her. Our home, once a sanctuary, felt like a prison filled with echoes of betrayal. I spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, wrestling with my emotions. Anger and sadness morphed into a resolve that I had never known before. I began to think about my passport, the small book that held our dreams of travel and adventure. It was a symbol of our shared aspirations, yet now it felt tainted. I realized that I needed to take control of my life again, to reclaim my freedom that had been stolen by her infidelity. One night, as I sat alone at the dining table, I made a decision. I would remove Claire from my passport, figuratively and literally. I would travel the world alone, without the weight of her betrayal holding me back. The act of crossing her name out felt liberating, like shedding a heavy coat I had worn for too long. With each stroke of the pen, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I was no longer defined by her actions. I would embrace this new chapter, one filled with possibilities and adventures that I would undertake on my own terms. In that moment of clarity, I felt the first glimmers of hope. I would explore the world without her, a journey of self-discovery and healing. The thought of packing my bags and boarding a plane to a far-off destination filled me with excitement. I was ready to reclaim my life. The days that followed my decision were filled with a tumult of emotions. I felt like I was living in a parallel universe where everything remained the same on the surface, but inside, I was grappling with a storm. Claire tried to reach out, to talk about what had happened, but I was too consumed with my own feelings to engage. Each time she approached me, I felt a sharp pang in my chest, a reminder of her betrayal that I was still trying to process. I spent hours alone, walking through our neighborhood, each familiar street now feeling foreign. The trees that once seemed inviting now loomed over me like silent witnesses to my heartbreak. I would pass by cafes we used to frequent, places filled with laughter and shared moments, and I would feel a wave of anger wash over me. How could she do this? How could she throw away everything we had built together for a thrill with a man who was supposed to help us explore the world? At night, sleep evaded me. I would lie awake, tossing and turning, replaying every moment in my mind. I thought about the vacations we had taken, the plans we had made, and how she had looked at me with love. Was it all a lie? My heart ached with the weight of it all. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion, anger, and sadness. I started to journal my thoughts, pouring out my emotions onto the pages. Writing became my therapy, a way to untangle the mess of feelings that were consuming me. I wrote about the betrayal, about my anger towards Derek, who had taken advantage of our trust. I wrote about Claire, about the woman I had loved and the pain she had caused. Each entry was like a small step towards understanding my feelings, and eventually towards healing. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table with my journal open, I penned a line that struck me. I need to let go of the past to embrace my future. It was a simple thought, but it resonated deeply. I realized that holding onto my anger and pain would only prolong my suffering. I had to let go, not for her, but for myself. In a moment of clarity, I made a list of places I had always wanted to visit but had set aside because of our plans. Paris, Tokyo, Buenos Aires, and more. Each destination represented a new beginning, a chance to rediscover myself outside of the confines of my previous life. I was no longer just a husband. I was a man on a journey of self-discovery. I spent hours researching flights and accommodations, planning each detail of my trip. The act of planning became a distraction, a way to channel my energy into something positive. I chose to start my journey in Europe, where history and culture beckoned. I could picture myself wandering the streets of Paris, sipping coffee at a quaint cafe, and reveling in the freedom of being alone. The night before my departure, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. I packed my bags, making sure to include my journal, a camera, and a few essentials. As I zipped up my suitcase, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I was leaving behind the pain and betrayal and stepping into the unknown. Claire approached me one last time that night. She stood in the doorway, her face a mixture of sadness and regret. "Are you really going through with this?" she asked, her voice trembling. I looked at her, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the love we once shared. But it quickly faded, replaced by the reality of her actions. "I have to," I replied softly. "I need to find myself again." Tears filled her eyes, but I turned away, unable to comfort her. I had to be strong for myself. I was finally taking control of my life, and I couldn't let her pull me back into the darkness. The next morning, I woke up early, my heart racing with anticipation. I took one last look around the home we had shared, the memories flooding my mind. I felt a bittersweet pang as I closed the door behind me, but I was resolute. I was stepping into a new chapter, one filled with possibilities. As I boarded the plane, I felt a rush of exhilaration. I was leaving behind the pain of betrayal, ready to embrace the adventure that lay ahead. The world was waiting for me, and I was finally ready to explore it on my own terms. As the plane ascended, I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with a sense of liberation. The world below shrank away, and I was filled with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. I watched as the patchwork of fields and towns faded into the clouds, and I took a deep breath, letting the anticipation wash over me. This was it. This was my chance to redefine who I was. When I landed in Paris, the first thing that struck me was the unmistakable aroma of fresh pastries wafting through the air. The bustling streets were alive with energy, and I felt a thrill at being a part of it, even if just as a solitary figure amidst the crowd. As I navigated through the narrow cobblestone streets, I realized how much I had missed out on by living in the shadow of my past. I checked into a small hotel in the Latin Quarter, a charming place with ivy climbing up the walls and a view of the Seine. The room was small but cozy, and I quickly dropped my bags. I ventured out into the city, my heart racing with excitement. I had no itinerary, no one to impress or accommodate. I was free to explore at my own pace. My first stop was a local cafe where I ordered a croissant and a café au lait. As I sat outside, watching the world go by, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was surrounded by couples, families, and friends, yet I felt strangely content in my solitude. I pulled out my journal and began to write, capturing my thoughts and feelings about this new chapter. Here I am, in the heart of Paris, alone but not lonely. I wrote, "There's a beauty in solitude that I never appreciated before. It's liberating to be my own companion, to explore this city without the expectations of another." After breakfast, I wandered through the streets, visiting landmarks like Notre Dame and the Louvre. The art, the history, the culture, it all felt overwhelming in the best way possible. I was a sponge, absorbing every detail. I spent hours meandering through the galleries, losing myself in the beauty of the world around me. Each painting, each sculpture, whispered stories of passion, heartbreak, and resilience, and I felt a connection to those artists who had poured their souls into their work. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the city, I found myself sitting on a bench near the Seine. I watched as the lights began to twinkle on the bridges and buildings, creating a magical atmosphere. It was in that moment that I truly felt the weight of my past begin to lift. I was no longer just the betrayed husband. I was a traveler, a seeker of new experiences. That night, I decided to indulge in a traditional French dinner at a bistro nearby. As I sat at the table, savoring every bite of coq au vin, I realized how much I had missed out on by living in a comfortable routine. There was a thrill in trying new things, in stepping outside of my comfort zone. I struck up a conversation with the waiter, a friendly young man named Julian who shared stories of his life in Paris. "Life is too short to hold on to regrets," he said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "You must embrace every moment, every opportunity. You never know where it might lead you." His words resonated deeply within me. I was beginning to understand that this journey was not just about escape, it was about rediscovery. I had lost sight of who I was in the midst of my marriage, and now I had the chance to reconnect with myself. Over the next few days, I continued to explore Paris, visiting Montmartre, the Eiffel Tower, and the charming streets of Le Marais. I took long walks along the Seine, capturing photos of the breathtaking scenery. Each day was filled with new experiences, tasting different cuisines, meeting locals, and engaging in conversations that brought me joy. I found myself reflecting on my past with Claire less and less. The memories of betrayal were still there, but they no longer held the same power over me. I was learning to forgive, not for her, but for myself. I realized that holding onto anger would only weigh me down. I had to let go to move forward, and each step I took in the city brought me closer to that realization. As I prepared to leave Paris and head to my next destination, I felt a mixture of excitement and nostalgia. I had made memories that would last a lifetime, and I had begun to rediscover the person I once was. The journey was far from over. It was just beginning. I boarded the train to Barcelona, my heart racing with anticipation. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Each new city, each new experience, was a chance to redefine my life on my own terms. I was no longer just a husband. I was a traveler, and the world was my canvas. Barcelona welcomed me with open arms, its vibrant energy palpable as soon as I stepped off the train. The sun bathed the city in a warm glow, and the air was filled with the enticing scent of tapas and fresh seafood. I felt an immediate connection to the bustling streets, the laughter and chatter of locals and tourists blending into a lively symphony. This city was alive, and I was ready to dive into its rhythm. I checked into a small hostel in the heart of the Gothic Quarter, a labyrinth of narrow streets and historic buildings. The atmosphere was buzzing with travelers from all over the world, each with their own story to tell. I felt a sense of camaraderie with them, united by the shared experience of exploration. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of excitement coursing through me. As I settled into my new surroundings, I decided to take a walking tour of the city. The guide, a spirited local named Maria, led us through the winding streets, sharing tales of Barcelona's rich history and culture. I was captivated by her passion, the way her eyes lit up as she spoke about the architectural wonders of Antoni Gaudí. Barcelona is a city that thrives on creativity, she said, gesturing towards the stunning Sagrada Familia. It's a place where art and life intertwine, where you can feel the spirit of the past while embracing the future. Her words resonated deeply with me. I realized that this journey was not just about escaping my past, but about embracing new experiences and perspectives. I had spent too long in a life that felt stagnant, and now I was ready to immerse myself in the vibrant culture around me. After the tour, I wandered through the streets, letting my curiosity guide me. I stumbled upon a small market filled with colorful stalls selling fresh produce, artisan cheeses, and handmade crafts. I felt drawn to a stall overflowing with ripe tomatoes and fragrant herbs. The vendor, a kind elderly woman, offered samples of her homemade paella. I savored the flavors, and for a moment I felt a sense of belonging in this new place. That evening, I made my way to the beach, the sound of waves crashing against the shore soothing my restless mind. I sat on the sand, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. It was a moment of pure tranquility, a stark contrast to the turmoil I had experienced just weeks before. As I watched the sunset, I reflected on how far I had come in such a short time. I was learning to appreciate the beauty of solitude, to find joy in my own company. The weight of my past was slowly lifting, replaced by a sense of freedom I had never known before. The next few days in Barcelona were filled with exploration. I visited Park Güell, marveling at Gaudí's whimsical designs, and wandered through the bustling streets of La Rambla, where street performers and artists brought the city to life. I indulged in delicious tapas, savoring each bite as I mingled with fellow travelers, sharing stories and laughter. One night, while dining at a local restaurant, I struck up a conversation with a young woman named Elena, who was traveling solo as well. She shared her own story of heartbreak and self-discovery, and we quickly bonded over our shared experiences. We spent hours talking, laughing, and exploring the city together. Elena's presence was refreshing. She reminded me that I was not alone on this journey. We climbed to the top of Montjuic, where we were rewarded with breathtaking views of the city. As we stood there, the city lights twinkling below us, I felt a sense of connection, not just to her but to the world around me. Traveling alone can be a powerful experience, she said, looking out over the city. It forces you to confront yourself, to embrace who you are and what you want from life. Her words struck a chord within me. I realized that this journey was not just about escaping my past, but about rediscovering my identity. I was no longer defined by my marriage or Claire's betrayal. I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece, with every new experience and connection I made. As the days turned into weeks, I embraced the freedom of being a solo traveler. I explored the art scene, visited museums, and spent lazy afternoons in parks, reading and journaling. I felt alive, each moment a reminder that I was capable of finding joy and fulfillment on my own. One afternoon, as I sat in a cafe sipping on a café con leche, I noticed a group of friends at a nearby table, laughing and sharing stories. A pang of longing hit me, a reminder of the camaraderie I had once shared with Claire. But instead of feeling sadness, I smiled to myself, feeling grateful for the connections I was making, however fleeting they might be. I began to understand that while my marriage had ended, my life was far from over. It was just the beginning of a new adventure. I was learning to embrace the uncertainty and spontaneity that came with traveling alone. Each day brought new opportunities, new lessons, and new experiences that shaped my journey. As I prepared to leave Barcelona and head to my next destination, I felt a bittersweet sense of nostalgia. I had created memories that would last a lifetime, and I had begun to truly rediscover myself. The journey was far from over. It was just beginning. I boarded the train to my next destination, my heart racing with anticipation for what lay ahead. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that each new city, Each new experience was a chance to redefine my life on my own terms. As the train pulled away from Barcelona, I felt a mix of excitement and anticipation for the next leg of my journey. I was heading to Rome, a city steeped in history, art, and culture. The mere thought of wandering through ancient ruins and indulging in authentic Italian cuisine filled me with a sense of wonder. I settled into my seat, watching the landscape roll by, each passing moment a reminder of my newfound freedom. Upon arriving in Rome, I was immediately struck by the city's energy. The bustling streets were filled with tourists and locals alike, each corner revealing a new layer of history. I checked into a quaint bed and breakfast near the Vatican, where the owner greeted me with a warm smile and a plate of fresh pastries. The aroma of coffee and baked goods filled the air, and I felt a sense of belonging wash over me. My first day in Rome was spent exploring the iconic landmarks. I stood in awe before the Colosseum, imagining the gladiators who once fought for their lives in that grand arena. The history of the place resonated deep within me, and I felt a connection to the countless souls who had walked these streets before me. I wandered through the Roman Forum, absorbing the stories of triumph and defeat etched into the stones. It was at the Trevi Fountain that I had my first moment of self-reflection. As I tossed a coin over my shoulder, I made a wish, not for love or reconciliation, but for continued strength and clarity. I wanted to embrace the journey ahead, to fully immerse myself in the experiences that awaited me. The sound of the water splashing around me felt like a cleansing ritual, washing away remnants of my past. Over the next few days, I explored Rome with a sense of purpose. I visited the Vatican museums, marveling at the breathtaking artwork and the grandeur of the Sistine Chapel. I stood in silence, staring up at Michelangelo's masterpiece, feeling a deep appreciation for the beauty of human creativity. It reminded me that my own journey was a canvas waiting to be painted. One afternoon, I decided to take a cooking class, eager to learn how to make authentic Italian pasta. The class was filled with fellow travelers, each of us excited to learn a new skill. As we rolled out the dough and shaped the pasta, I felt a sense of camaraderie develop among the group. We shared laughter and stories, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of connection that reminded me of the joy of human interaction. During the class, I met Marco, a charismatic chef who shared his passion for cooking with infectious enthusiasm. He told us about his family's history in Rome and how food was a way to connect with loved ones. His words struck a chord within me. I realized that food and travel were not just about sustenance, but about creating memories and connections. After the class, Marco invited us to join him for dinner at a local trattoria. I hesitated at first. I was still getting used to being alone, but something urged me to accept the invitation. That evening, as we sat around the table, sharing plates of homemade pasta and laughter, I felt a warmth envelop me. It was a reminder that even in solitude, I could find connection and joy. As the days passed, I found myself falling in love with Rome. I spent hours wandering through the streets, visiting hidden gems like the Pantheon and the charming Trastevere neighborhood. I savored gelato on warm evenings and watched street performers entertain crowds in the piazzas. Each experience felt like a celebration of life, a reminder that I was alive and capable of creating my own happiness. One night, while sitting on the steps of the Spanish Steps, I felt a wave of realization wash over me. I was no longer defined by my past or my relationship with Claire. I was carving out my own path, embracing the freedom that came with being alone. I had learned to appreciate the beauty of solitude, to find strength in my vulnerability. In the midst of this self-discovery, I began to reflect on what I truly wanted from life moving forward. I had spent years living for someone else, catering to Claire's dreams and desires while neglecting my own. Now, I was free to pursue my passions, to explore the world on my own terms. As I prepared to leave Rome, I took one last stroll through the city, soaking in the sights and sounds. I felt a sense of gratitude for the experiences I had gained, for the lessons learned along the way. I was no longer a man defined by betrayal. I was a traveler, a seeker of new beginnings. I boarded the flight to my next destination, Athens, eager to embrace whatever awaited me. The journey was far from over. It was just the beginning of a new chapter filled with possibilities. I was ready to explore, to discover, and to continue redefining my life on my own terms. As the plane took off, I looked out the window at the fading skyline of Rome. The memories of the past were still there, but they no longer held power over me. I was reclaiming my life, one adventure at a time, and I couldn't wait to see where the next destination would lead me. When I landed in Athens, the air was warm and filled with the scent of olive oil and herbs. The city was alive with history, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose as I stepped out of the airport. I had spent weeks traveling through Europe, each city teaching me something new about myself. Now I was ready to embrace the cradle of civilization, a place where democracy and philosophy were born. I checked into a small hotel in Plaka, the old neighborhood beneath the Acropolis. The streets were narrow and winding, lined with charming tavernas and shops selling handmade crafts. I felt a sense of excitement as I wandered through the bustling streets, soaking in the vibrant atmosphere. Here, surrounded by ancient ruins and modern life, I felt a profound connection to the past and present. My first day in Athens was spent exploring the Acropolis. As I climbed the steps towards the Parthenon, I marveled at the sheer scale of the ancient structure. Standing before it, I felt a sense of awe wash over me. This was a place where history had been made, where ideas had shaped the course of humanity. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the past settle around me. As I wandered through the ancient ruins, I reflected on my own journey. I had been through the depths of betrayal, but I was emerging stronger and more self-aware. Each experience had shaped me, and I was beginning to understand the power of resilience. I was no longer defined by the pain of my past. I was a man on a quest for self-discovery. In the evenings, I found myself sitting at outdoor cafes, sipping ouzo and chatting with locals. I met a group of artists who shared their passion for creativity and life. They welcomed me into their circle, and I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't experienced in a long time. We talked about art, philosophy, and the beauty of travel. Their enthusiasm for life was infectious, and I felt inspired to embrace my own passions. One night, we gathered around a table for a traditional Greek feast. The food was incredible: succulent lamb, fresh salads, and warm pita bread. As we shared stories and laughter, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I realized that while I had lost something significant in my marriage, I had gained so much more through my travels. I had discovered a world filled with kindness, creativity, and shared human experiences. As my time in Athens came to an end, I felt a bittersweet pang in my heart. I had created memories that would last a lifetime, and I had grown in ways I never expected. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was a traveler who had embraced his freedom and rediscovered himself. The journey was about more than just escaping the past. It was about finding clarity and purpose in the present. On my last evening, I climbed to the top of Lycabettus Hill to watch the sunset over the city. The view was breathtaking, the sky painted in vibrant hues of orange and purple. As I stood there, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had come so far, and I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. I thought about Claire and the life we had shared. I felt a sense of closure, not because I wanted to forget, but because I had learned to let go. I realized that I could carry the lessons of the past with me without allowing them to define my future. I was ready to embrace new experiences, new relationships, and a life filled with possibilities. As I stood on that hill, I made a promise to myself to continue exploring, to continue growing, and to never lose sight of the importance of living authentically. I was determined to cultivate a life that reflected my true self, one that embraced freedom and adventure. With a heart full of hope and excitement, I boarded my flight to my next destination, ready to embark on the next chapter of my journey. I was no longer just a man recovering from betrayal. I was a traveler, an explorer of life, and a seeker of joy. The world was vast and full of wonders, and I was determined to experience every moment to the fullest. As the plane took off into the night sky, I looked out at the twinkling lights of Athens below. I felt a sense of gratitude for the journey thus far and an eagerness for what lay ahead. I was ready to embrace the future, knowing that every step I took was a step towards discovering who I truly was meant to be. This was just the beginning.